Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My Two Cent video for this week, for the week of September 7th to the 13th, 2025, and we got three stories to cover, including the big one, which is basically after rumors here and there, we finally got an official Nintendo Direct that happened on Friday, which was an hour long, so definitely a long one indeed. We also have an interesting comment that broke out last Friday though, in terms of the Game Key Cards, and a comment that basically Ubisoft said when bringing Star Wars Outlaw to the Nintendo Switch 2, and the former employees or former folks head of Xbox comes out in terms of talking about GamePass, and they sort of don't have a, let's just say, not the positive response, at least according to what they are saying and everything. If you're interested in where I got the source of these information, links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this either on YouTube or Patreon, and of course timestamps will also be in the description of this video as well, if there are certain parts of this video you wish to skip to. But before we get started, I like to do what I like to call the quick My Two Cents. Stories that kind of caught my attention, but not going into a huge amount of details. The first one has to do with the fact that Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which has been released on multiple systems, including the Nintendo Switch 1 though, is supposedly getting a 60 frames per second mode that will be available with an upcoming patch and everything. Supposedly there is a catch and all, but still it is nice to see that the game is going to be 60 frames per second, I believe, on both the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 and all. This is a game I am trying out along with Shinobi as well. I did order that one from Amazon, so I'm hoping when that one comes to my door and all, hopefully I'll get a chance to try out that game. That one was, as I mentioned, I think I may have mentioned it, Shinobi, that one, and so far I'm liking what I'm seeing with that game as well. So this one I'm looking forward to trying out. We also learned that basically the developers of Warframe have announced that they had finally got their hands on a Switch 2 dev kit and everything like that, and they thank some of their friends at Nintendo. They, along with other developers, were at the time basically talking about how it was becoming very difficult to get their hands on a Switch 2 dev kit, as there certainly seems to be excitement for the Switch 2 being there and all. So obviously they're very pleased with the fact that they got their hands on a Switch 2 dev kit. No word if Panic Button is handling the Switch 2 port or not. It does sound like the developers of Warframe are basically going to be the ones handling it, but we'll have to wait and see on that though, and it'll be interesting to see how the Switch 2 version holds up though. We also learned that the classic Sony series Everybody Golfs basically seems to be off to a good start in Japan, which is certainly interesting, despite the game supposedly getting some mixed reviews or mixed response to that game coming out though. It is very interesting to see this, and I think there was another game as well, basically published by Bandai Namco, that was once, I think at one point, a Sony's IP and all. And if that is the case, I do wonder if this is opening the door to the possibility of Bandai Namco maybe publishing other maybe dormant Sony's IPs or anything like that. Maybe Dark Cloud or Rogue Galaxy, or maybe Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper could be in the cards maybe at some point down the road. We are seeing supposedly Sony push maybe to have their games outside of the PlayStation. We've seen them push on the PC, and of course Helldivers 2 recently just made their way over to the Xbox console and seems to be doing very well, at least according to some of the reports out there. So we'll have to wait and see, but for now it looks like Everybody Golf seemed to be off to a good start, at least in Japan though. We also learned that Ubisoft confirms that Far Cry will predominantly push for multiplayer in the future and all, and there are certainly ways people can look at this and everything. Some folks might be all right with this, but there are those who are worried about, Ubisoft maybe abandoning, like they've done single player games and everything like that. There's a whole issue of them pushing their luck with DRM and basically putting live services and everything like that. So there is certainly a little bit of concerns about that, but we'll have to wait and see once Far Cry 7, when that officially comes out and all. There's also been some rumors about the possibility Far Cry 7 could make its way over to Switch 2. Again, nothing, although it is worth pointing out, nothing's been confirmed about that at this time. And last but not least, we are learning that supposedly Sucker Punch was very pleased with basically GTA 6 being delayed. This has to do with some of the comments made by, I think, some of the developers and all. And that basically they're pleased with that because they were worried that GTA 6 will probably overshadow Ghost of Yotai when that comes out next month and all. So obviously they're very happy about that. I understand there are some folks who may have been looking forward to playing GTA 6 when it comes. Supposedly, we're hoping for it to come out this year and all, but given now Rockstar has been sort of quiet this year about GTA 6, outside of maybe seeing some clips here and there, we never really got a concrete launch date for that game. So hopefully we'll hear something next year, and hopefully it does come out next year. But in either case, though, Ghost of Yotai is definitely on my radar for next month, indeed. And in the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, during the Nintendo Direct, we learned of the title, at least for the upcoming Super Mario Bros. Movie, which will be out next year, April 2026, and that it's going to be called Super Mario Galaxy. And I will admit, I was a little bit surprised with that announcement, though, because many thought it was going to be something along the line of maybe Super Mario World, considering those who saw the end credit scene for the Super Mario Brothers movie saw the Yoshi egg. And so there's the assumption is that it would be based maybe like around Super Mario World. But then going to Super Mario Galaxy, that's kind of interesting indeed, though. It does throw in the question of whether or not Yoshi will still play a role and everything like that, considering the end credit scene. But at the same time, it does throw into question, what could we see Rosalia? And if so, what role will she play, though? Would she be what many believe to be, although this is what many folks think this could be, Princess Peach's mother or something like that? So there's certainly some questions that still remains to be seen. Hopefully, maybe we'll get a teaser trailer maybe before the end of the year, or if not, at the beginning of next year and everything like that. But this is definitely one on my radar. I will certainly be keeping an eye off. Keep an eye on, though. And also, if this is going to be called Super Mario Galaxy, the movie, then they need to get that Lumineer from the Super Mario Brothers movie. You know, the so-called happy one, let's just say, in the, that was in Bowser's Dungeon, that said some, let's just say, some very interesting comments indeed. I would love to see that one be in this Super Mario Galaxy movie and all. We also learned that supposedly Kevin Feige's MCU goal that he was aiming for will be completed by the end of 2027. This all culminates when supposedly Avengers Secret Wars comes out, though, that will culminate in terms of supposedly, at least according to what Kevin Feige is saying, reset the timeline. And this has to do with pretty much all the MCU characters under, one roof rather than being separated like it was in the past, considering now that Marvel Studios now has the rights to all of basically, well, almost all, but pretty much a lot of the rights, movie rights to all the characters and everything that they needed, though, which obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what this means going forward following the events of Secret Wars and all. There are those who believe that the next chapter could be the Mutant Saga and everything after pretty much the multiverse saga coming to an end, which I kind of felt was sort of mixed at best, at least according to my perspective, though. There were some highs and lows, to be exact. But either way, though, it'll be interesting to see how the MCU, or Kevin Feige's goal with the MCU, is completed by the end of Avengers Secret War, which comes out 2027. And last but not least, a report from Deadline, which they picked up from the Wall Street Journal, seems to indicate that Paramount may be exploring the idea of buying Warner Brothers Discovery, though. Supposedly there was a merger in the talks in the past, but nothing really came through, though. But with Paramount concluding with their purchase with Skydance concluding their purchase with Paramount and everything like that, it seems to indicate that they're eyeing for Warner Brothers and all. How well this will go down remains to be seen, though. For me, I'm not against the idea of mergers or acquisitions though, but I do think it is important to ensure that any merger and acquisition is done so in a way that is not anti-consumer, not anti-employee, not anti-union, and politics does not play a part in it in any shape, in any form, though. So those are certainly some areas I personally would look at before any decision of a merger and acquisitions. And I wouldn't be against the idea of any remedies put in place as long as they are strong and effective remedies. So we'll have to wait and see what happens and whether or not this bid does go through, and whether or not Paramount, which is now owned by Skydance, ends up buying Warner Bros. Discovery or not and all. Okay, with the Quick My 2 Cent part now done, along with the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with Game Pass and former employees responding in regards of or commenting on Game Pass in general. Now, there have been many different views about the subscription services that we started to see with a lot of video games, though, whether it's Ubisoft Plus or, EA doing one as well, to even, with PlayStation Plus, though. And then, of course, we have Game Pass, which in a way kind of got the ball rolling with these subscription services, though. Now, there has been some folks have had some arguments back and forth, and there are some who have pointed out some of the negative to the positive, though. And there have been some developers that have put their games on Game Pass itself. Some have found successes, others not so much. So it certainly is a debatable thing about the whole thing with game subscriptions in general, though. I've had Game Pass since I got my Xbox Series S, though. And I do think that there is some good to Game Pass. It gives me an opportunity to, try the game out before if I decide to buy it or not, though. And if I do decide to buy it on the Xbox Series S, I do get a discount out of buying the game and everything like that. However, like I mentioned before, not everybody seems to be completely on board with Game Pass or do have some concerns about it in general. From an article on GameSpot, it does point out Pete Hines weighing in to basically about Game Pass in general, though. He points out that basically his main issue with subscription services like Game Pass or others is that the economy might not always make sense, and that's a critical point in a world where massive layoffs, studio closures, and games cancellations. He says, quote, "Subscriptions has been a new four-letter word, right? You can't buy a product anymore. When you talk about a subscription that relies on content, you don't figure out how to balance the need of the service and the people running the service, the people who are providing the content without your subscription. It's worth," quote, pardon my language, "jack shit when you have a real problem," he said. Hines went off to say, says a company behind a subscription service of the game needs to properly acknowledge, compensate, and recognize what it takes to create the content and not just make a game, but make a product. The tension inherits the situation that Hines outlines is hurting a lot of people, including game developers, though, because they're fitting into an ecosystem that's not properly valuing and rewarding what they're making. Now, he's not the only one who brought this up as well. Take-Two boss Strauss Salas said the same thing. He points out he does acknowledge that Microsoft putting Call of Duty on Game Pass will no doubt help drive subscribers to the service, but the executive said that it may only work for a short period of time, though. Jim Ryan seems to, former Sony boss Jim Ryan agrees with Strauss Salas on this, that it doesn't make economic sense, at least according to him. And now we are learning that basically former Microsoft employees, or two more, have chimed in on this, though. First one has to do with Shannon Lopes, if I'm saying the name correctly. The former VP of Xbox Game Studios said via Tweaktown that she agrees with Hines' assumption of subscription service starting at Game Pass comes at the expense of retail revenue. Game Pass can claim a few victories in terms of games that might have otherwise sunk beneath the waves. She basically calling out Human Fall Flat as an example. However, the majority of game adaptations on Game Pass comes at the cost of revenue for retailers, he said, unless the game is engineered from the ground up for post-release monetization. regarding what Shannon said about Game Pass coming at the expense of retail revenues. This is something even Microsoft has admitted to. Microsoft's own CFO testified that Starfield, Indiana Jones, and The Great Circle likely lost out on millions in retail sales due to Game Pass. For its part, Microsoft has always said that Game Pass is offered as an option for players as opposed to being the only way to buy and play a Xbox game, which is kind of true to some degree. One of the biggest games launch ever, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, was the #1 best-selling game in the US in 2024. Despite also being available day-to-day with the subscription service, that doesn't mean the game's retail sales won't be impacted by Game Pass availability. However, former PlayStation executive Sean Layden, meanwhile, said that Hines was correct in his assumption that subscription services like Game Pass. Lane said that people should question whether or not Game Pass is healthy and helpful for developers, and not if the service is profitable for the platform. Microsoft recently reported that Game Pass annual revenue reached nearly $5 billion for the first time since launch. However, whether or not Game Pass is profitable for Microsoft is unknown. In a recent interview, Hines, who left Bethesda after Microsoft bought the company, laid out his concerns about subscription services in gaming. He said, quote, "Subscriptions has become the new four-letter word, right? You can't buy," or I mentioned this probably before though, so I will say, at the very least, though, I don't completely disagree with what they're saying. I do think there is that concern about the profitability, especially for a lot of these studios that unfortunately pour like almost millions and millions of dollars in these so-called games and need to, make that money back one way or another, though there's some debate over game development costs in general, though. Do I foresee this as basically Game Pass or other subscription services are going away? I don't think so, and it's pretty clear Microsoft is doubling down on Game Pass, to be exact, though. But is there room for improvement, though? Yes, I do think there may be some room for improvement for Game Pass in general, though. I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft has to make some adjustments here and there for Game Pass in general, to be exact, though. And obviously, it may or may not work for every developer out there, though. Obviously, some developers found success, like the development team behind Atomfall, the same studio that's known for doing, the Sniper Elite series and the Zombie Army trilogy. Supposedly found success thanks to Game Pass. Indeed. Hollow Knight Silksong recently got released onto Game Pass as well, and supposedly it's doing pretty well, especially on Steam. With I think last time I heard it was like over 500,000 concurrent players, to be exact. So it's clear when you look at Game Pass in general or the subscription service, it's a double-edged sword. There are certainly some positives to it, and there certainly is some negative to it. And I do think if Microsoft is serious about Game Pass, which they sound like they are, they're going to have to find a way to strike a balance in a way to make it successful, but not, but at the same time address some of the concerns folks like Pete Hines are basically bringing up, though. So overall, though, I don't foresee Game Pass going away or anything like that, but there's no denying the fact that that it's clear that Microsoft and other companies that rely on these subscription services certainly do have their work cut out for them and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this one has to do with a interesting comment that Ubisoft recently said in regards of game key cards. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video, and for this one we're going to be taking a look at an interesting comment made by Ubisoft in regards of game key cards for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, for those who are familiar with it, the Switch, when it comes to the physical media side for the Switch 2, there are 2 formats out there. There's currently right now the 64 gigabyte format, And then there is a game key card in which you basically use that to basically insert that into your Switch 2 to download the game off the internet and all. Now, game key cards have been, I would say, controversial depending on who you're asking, as there are some folks who simply will not buy a game if it comes on to a game key card and all, and there are those who feel like they're not bothered by this stuff. I would say I'm not hugely bothered with buy game key cards, but I do kind of view them as sort of as a double-edged sword though. While I do agree with a lot of those on the game preservation side of the situation in terms of the fact that they rather have the full game into the cartridge and everything, the Switch 2 cartridge, similar comment that CD Projekt Red said in regards of Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch 2. I do acknowledge that at least the one thing that Switch game key cards have over, let's say, when a physical version comes out and it happens to be the empty box with a piece of paper with a code on it, is that at least with game key cards, supposedly they're not tied to your account. They could be bought used and they can be reselled as well. So I kind of view them as sort of the lesser of the two evils. Now, the mindset at the time with game key cards is that it's often viewed as could be from a cost standpoint though, and that may be some of the reasons why developers are not choosing to put their games on game key cards. However, a comment sort of came out by one of the developers at Ubisoft that pointed out that sounds like that may not be the case, and it mostly has to do with technical issues in regards of the engine used to power Star Wars Outlaw on the Nintendo Switch 2. From an article on Nintendo Everything, it reads that the audio architects from Ubisoft's Snowdrop engine recently spoke about the situation on social media. In one post, this person named Rob Batten, if I'm saying the name correctly, notes that the engine relies heavily on disk streaming for its open world environment, and Switch 2 cards didn't give the performance needed for their quality target. He went on to say they had Star Wars Outlaw been developed for Switch 2 originally, it might have been different though. He continues, as it was, we built the game around the SSD of the Eternal Target platform, and then the Switch 2 came along a while later. In this case, I think our leadership made the right call. Much discussion surrounding game key cards thus far has been about the file size. Right now, it seems that Nintendo isn't offering many choices when it comes down to the physical release. If you want to have your game on a cartridge without no download, you basically have to go with the 64 gigabytes, and some publishers don't want to pay up for that. There are already a number of Switch 2 titles that exceeds 64 gigabytes though. For Star Wars Outlaw, the file size wouldn't have been an issue. The game is neighborhood of 20 gigabytes, so it's very much fit in the traditional cartridge. Ubisoft's reason seems to come down to the technical limitations. So it seems cost wasn't really an issue, and there were some claims that cost never really brought up. It was during the technical side of it though, which is kind of interesting to hear, considering that if that's the case, I do wonder, had the Switch 2 came along earlier and the game was developed around the same time the PS5 and Xbox Series S and X version, if Ubisoft could have found a way to get the entire game into, like, say, a 64 gigabyte cartridge though. So that it would have been interesting if that was the case. Obviously it isn't, but still it is kind of interesting to see that the reason could be behind the technical issues and all. So does it completely change my view about game key cards? Not necessarily, but I will say that I don't think game key cards are going to be going away anytime soon or anything like that. That said, I still stand behind a position that I do think Nintendo may have to rethink certain things though, especially with the 64 gigabyte size. If they're saying that their technical limitations would have been an issue if they tried to put the game in the full 64 gigabyte size though, perhaps maybe Nintendo needs to go back to the drawing board, maybe re-examine or rethink some things, or maybe the possibility there may have to be some re-examining in regards to the game key cards to see if it's possible to offer different file sizes, like if there's like a 32 gigabyte or 16 or 8-bit gigabyte. But still, nevertheless, it is sort of interesting the fact that the developers opted to go with a Game Key Card, not for cost reason, but for technical reasons, to be exact though. So that's going to be interesting to see what this means going forward with Game Key Cards in general, and with, you know, like the physical format and everything. So overall though, very interesting situation regarding Star Wars Outlaw, and this reason for why the developers opt to use a Game Key Card for the Switch 2 version and not the physical version, to be exact though. As I said, I don't think Game Key Cards are going away, but it is possible Nintendo may have to rethink certain things here and there in regards to the Game Key Card. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our third and final part, and this one has to do with the Nintendo Direct that happened this week. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our third and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Direct that happened on Friday though, this week and everything like that, and it was an hour-long Direct and everything. Now, I would say since the launch of the Switch 2 though, I think the two presentations, the Partner Showcase and Indie World, I would say I kind of felt was like mixed at best though. While there were some neat announcements here and there, they weren't really, I would say, as good as say like past Directs or anything. I'm not saying they were terrible, just not nearly as good as some of the Directs that happened before though. And for some folks out there, not everybody, for some were kind of worried about what was Nintendo doing, everything like that, and some were concerned about the Switch 2 and all, but to be fair though, I mean, even though the Directs may have not been at least good in my book though, that hasn't stopped the Switch 2 from seeming to be doing very well for Nintendo and everything. So it's certainly, but that still, I can see why some people were a little bit concerned. And then we started to hear rumblings of the next, the Nintendo Direct being planned for September. We had folks like Nate the Hate chimed in, to even Switch Force and all, who seem to be on a roll lately with getting a lot of their information right and all. And obviously, like still with any rumors, you take it with a grain of salt. Well, we certainly had the Direct this week, and after watching an hour of it though, which covered pretty much things from Mario's 40th anniversary with some of the announcements, such as some amiibos here and there, the Talking Flower getting its own product, which, okay, storybook, the Rosalia storybook, same one used in Super Mario Galaxy and all, and everything like that. We did get some interesting announcements, including one in particular that seemed to be rumored at first and it's now been confirmed and all. But also at the same time, I also felt there were some things that I really wish that there was in this Direct and everything. So, but in either case, I still thought this was a good Direct nevertheless. So I'm going to break it down into what I like and what I didn't like, mixed, I'm not 100% sure about though. In terms of what I like, during the Mario 40th anniversary part, we now have officially confirmed that Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 are coming to the Nintendo Switch and Switch 2. Certainly nice indeed, especially Mario Galaxy 2, because ever since Super Mario 3D All-Star came out and only Mario Galaxy was on there, many wonder if Nintendo had forgotten about Super Mario Galaxy 2. So obviously they did not. So it's certainly nice to see that we're going to get both of those games indeed. And who knows, maybe this opens the door to the possibility of a Mario Galaxy 3. We do know that we have a upcoming the Super Mario Galaxy movie, the sequel to Super Mario Brothers. So who knows to be exact, but in either case, glad to see Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 will be coming not only to the Switch, but the Switch 2, or should I say Mario Galaxy 2 finally have officially been announced. The next thing is that we saw some new footage of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, to be exact, with some of the gameplay here and there, but we also saw like a new motorcycle-like vehicle with it, and Samus going through like the sand terrain and all, and it seems to indicate that this game may be open world, which would definitely be a departure from the past Metroid Prime and Metroid games that we've seen in the past though. How that's going to work is beyond me, to be exact though, although it is worth pointing out some of the folks who worked on Halo Infinite is working on this game. So there may be some level of inspiration from it. I'm not saying 100% certain, but it will be very interesting to see if it is open world, how much of that open world plays into Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. But in either case, it is definitely on my radar. It's still scheduled for this year, but there haven't been any launch date just yet. Hopefully they'll announce a date soon. I would like to really see a date for that game soon and all. The next thing we do is that we now have an official launch date for Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. It basically is November 6, 2025, which is certainly neat indeed, though. And judging by some of the latest footage that recently came out that was shown during this direct, it looked like the game seemed to be running at 60 frames per second, which if that is correct and if that is true, then I think that's good. I'm glad that that the game is running at that frame rate and everything. So definitely is one I'm looking forward to. I mean, I'm all for a Nintendo themed Warrior game, and while I would have liked to see something like a Xenoblade Chronicles Warrior and all, still another Hyrule Warriors game isn't necessarily a bad one. The next one, and I thought this was a big one, is that it was with this being rumored that Resident Evil 9 was going to be coming to the Switch 2. We finally got official confirmation of that, though, and we now know the game is coming to the Switch 2 after all. It's also been confirmed as well that Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 Village is also now going to will be released onto the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. I think this is great. I'm glad that Capcom is looking to bring the Resident Evil games over to the Nintendo Switch 2 and everything. I am very curious to see how this game is going to run and play on the Nintendo Switch, including Resident Evil 9. So this is definitely, I think, was a big announcement, and I thought this was definitely a good announcement indeed, especially from Capcom, along with more footage of Monster Hunter Stories 3 as well. The next thing we saw was that Donkey Kong Bonanza was getting some DLC, which is certainly nice. The DLC seemed to show basically them on Donkey Kong Island and him actually working for VoidCon to a certain degree, and basically looking at for these emeralds here and there. So certainly nice indeed, though. Although I will admit that it's sort of odd this is getting a DLC, but Mario Kart World isn't. It's sort of an odd situation, indeed, but nevertheless, very happy to see that Donkey Kong Bonanza is getting some DLC indeed. The next thing is that we are seeing some Switch 1 games are slowly starting to get a Switch 2 version. The ones they showed was basically Super Mario Bros. Wonder and One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 will also be getting a Switch 2 version. I believe both of them or one of them will be getting a free update if you have the Switch 1 version. And with the Super Mario Bros. Wonder, they basically showed off some different multiplayer modes and all. And supposedly there's more content coming. It does sound like it will be more next year. The one they also showed was a small clip of the Koopa Kids basically in it. So I do wonder if there's like a new single player / story DLC that we might get out of it though. So certainly nice indeed for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So certainly nice, and the fact that a Switch 2 version is happening. The next thing is the Square Enix definitely had some announcements made for basically the Switch 2. We saw basically Final Fantasy VII Integrate. We do have a launch date, but it's unfortunately will be pushed to January 22nd, 2026. Although there are certainly reports or supposedly been confirmed that the entire Final Fantasy VII trilogy will make its way over to the Switch 2 and other systems as well. This includes Rebirth and I believe the upcoming Part 3. As well. We also saw a reimagining of the new Dragon Quest game. Don't know which number it was though, but it's a supposedly reimagining of it, and it's footage of Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D, so that certainly is nice indeed to see that one as well. Next one is that we saw another entry in the Fatal Frame series called Fatal Frame Crimson Butterfly. It supposedly is a remake. This one was announced for the Switch 2, also for other systems as well. So certainly nice to see this horror series continuing and all. The next one is during Mario's 40th anniversary presentation, we did get to see a new Yoshi game called Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. I definitely like the art style and the look for the game, to be exact though. I'm very curious to see how this one is going to play. I'm hoping this one is good though, because outside of Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, I felt like the Yoshi games have been kind of a mixed bag, to say the least, though. So we'll be very interested to see how this one plays and everything. And finally, last but not least, they closed out the Direct on a high note with a new Fire Emblem game called Fire Emblem Fortune Weaver, the heroic games, though. So this certainly is neat indeed. Indeed, there were rumors about the possibility of Fire Emblem Three House getting a Switch 2 edition, and it is possible at some point down the road it could, along with Fire Emblem Engage. But it is nice to know that a brand new Fire Emblem game is in the work, and supposedly it will be out be out next year, barring any last-minute delays or anything like that. So definitely a good way to close out the Nintendo Direct for September. As far as what I didn't like, mixed or not 100% sure about, I will say that I do feel that while I do think the 40th anniversary for the Super Mario Bros. Series was good, I do think there was a missed opportunity here to announce a new 3D or 2D Mario game, indeed and all. And I think that is a little bit unfortunate and everything. Now, for the record, I don't doubt Nintendo is probably working on a new 3D Mario game, to be exact, though. So I'm sure when they're ready to show it, they're ready to show it, though. So I don't doubt that. But I do feel like this was a missed opportunity for the 40th anniversary to announce a new 3D Mario game and everything. So I kind of view it as a missed opportunity right here. The next thing has to do with the Resident Evil games coming to the Switch 2. And while it's great that we're getting Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9 that are coming to the Switch 2, it is a little bit unfortunate we didn't hear the announcement of the Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 remakes for the Switch 2. It would have been nice if they have also announced those games as well. Although there is reports claiming that the games are still coming, though. I still think it's kind of odd those weren't announced first and everything, but nevertheless, though, it is a little unfortunate this wasn't announced, though. But I mean, if the 7, 8, 9 are coming to the Switch 2, odds are the remakes of 2, 3, and 4 will probably make their way over at some point down the road. The next thing to want to talk about is that they announced another system for the Nintendo Switch Online. This one has to do with the Virtual Boy. So it was kind of an interesting surprise and everything. They didn't hear that come to the Switch 2 or the Nintendo Switch Online. And while it is nice that their games are coming to the Nintendo Switch Online, it might be a little annoying for some who have to buy this sort of attachment to sort of recreate sort of like the headset for, the Virtual Boy and everything. There's also a cardboard cutout for something like that. So some folks might be okay with it, others may not, to be exact. But nevertheless, it was nice to see. Nevertheless, I won't say it was bad for Virtual Boy to come to the Virtual Boy games coming to the Switch Online service. The next thing I want to talk about is the Camelot's new game that they're developing, though, and that's Mario Tennis Fever. Now, I'm not against this game or anything like that. I think it's nice that we're getting a new Mario Tennis game for the Switch 2 and all, and I'm sure it will find an audience, to be exact, though. I'm sure these Mario titles or sports titles definitely do very well. But at the same time, I will admit that it would have been nice if the developers Camelot would have announced I personally would have preferred them to announce like a brand new or a remake or a remaster of the Golden Sun games. So whether it's a remake or remaster of the DS version, since the first two Golden Sun games are on Nintendo Switch Online service via the Game Boy Advance one, or a brand new one for the Switch 2. I personally would have loved to have heard that announcement at all. Again, nothing against Mario Tennis Fever. I don't have anything against that game. It's just, I just would have preferred like a new Golden Sun game. Indeed. It's possible we might see one at some point down the road and everything, but for now, it's a little bit unfortunate they didn't announce that type of game for the Nintendo Direct. But again, nothing wrong with Mario Tennis Fever or anything like that. The next thing has to do with Monolith Soft, which Unfortunately, this would have been great for them to announce their new game, or at least get some teaser about what kind of game they're working on for the Switch 2 and all. We know they're working on one, and they worked through it the entire Switch 1 life cycle. The last game, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, was released earlier this year for the Switch 1 and everything, and it would have been nice to just see what other game they may be working on for maybe the Switch 2, whether it's a new Xenoblade game or whether it's a brand new IP or something like that. There have been rumors about them working on that, though. It just would have been nice to have seen some teaser or something like that during this Nintendo Direct, and it's a little bit unfortunate we didn't get to see that at all. And last but not least, though, is the fact that unfortunately, those who are hoping to see anything from Microsoft, like a Gears of War Reloaded or anything like Starfield or anything like that, might have been a bit disappointed with this Direct. Now, we know Microsoft has been open to bringing a lot of their games to other platforms as well. We know that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is going to make its way over to the Switch 2 next year, which is certainly great. And there are rumors that Starfield could also make its way over to the Switch 2 and all. But still, it would have been nice to hear some sort of announcement of see what Microsoft might have been cooking up for basically bringing over to the Switch 2. Some have hoped maybe Starfield, others may have hoped like a Call of Duty game, although many believe that probably next year we'll probably see a Call of Duty game come to the Switch 2 and all. But either case, though, it is a little bit unfortunate we didn't really see anything for Microsoft for at least for this Direct and everything. Overall, I would say this was actually a very solid and good Direct. While it certainly wasn't like the most mind-blowing Direct out there, there were certainly excuse me, some pretty good announcements indeed for this Direct and all, and I thought it was done very well indeed. I like the fact that we saw some new footage with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Great that Mario Galaxy 2 is finally coming to the Switch 1 and Switch 2, along with Mario Galaxy 1. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment looks really neat. The Square Enix is certainly doing a lot with the Switch 2 and all. And of course, the Resident Evil games coming to the Switch 2, 7, 8, and 9. I think that was, to me, that was the highlight for me to see that announcement indeed. So, and supposedly them being native, though, not the cloud version that we got on Switch 1. So that certainly was good indeed. But at its worst, though, I do think there were certain things like missed opportunities for new 3D Mario games. Some Resident Evil, the remakes of 2, 3, and 4, unfortunately were missing from this Direct, though. And basically nothing on Microsoft or Monolith's new game for this Direct. So there were some things I thought was a little bit unfortunate. It would have been nice to fit this Direct. But in either case, though, I did come away very pleased with this one. They certainly had a lot of good announcements, indeed. Most of it was first-party games, but excuse me, it certainly was definitely a good Direct, to be exact. It'll be very interesting to see what happens next year once we start moving away from the launch period of the Switch 2, and hopefully we'll start seeing more announcements, maybe more third-party developers jumping on board for the Switch 2 and everything. So hopefully that will be the case. But in either way, I did enjoy this Nintendo Direct for September 2025. Nevertheless, though. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about some of the former executives or folks who worked at Microsoft in regards of Game Pass in general? Do you think that they are right to raise some concerns about it, that there may be some issues with subscription services in general? Do you think Microsoft will find a way to make some improvements here and there? Do you think this could spell the end of stuff like Game Pass, or you doubt that some stuff like Game Pass will go away? What are your thoughts about this comment from Ubisoft in regards to the Game Key Cards? Do you think, excuse me, do you think this was the right decision to go for the Game Key Card instead of putting it on the 64 gigabyte cartridge due to technical limitations for the game? To be exact, though, do you still think we could see Nintendo maybe re-examine some of their approach with Game Key Cards going forward in any way? And what are your thoughts about the September 2025 Nintendo Direct, though. Do you think this was a very good Direct indeed, though? Were there certain games you were happy that they finally announced for the Switch 2 and even the Switch 1 as well? Do you think did you think it was a bad Direct in any way? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me, Patreon, or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this either on YouTube or Patreon. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!